Hello everyone, my name is Andrea Valderrama, and in this video I'm going to talk about two important documents which are myth and misconceptions about second language learning, what every teacher needs to unlearn, and popular ideas about second language learning. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about first about popular ideas about second language learning. So here in this document, we can find many different ideas and that some teacher have when in the process of learning second language. So I'm going to explain some of these ideas. So the first idea we have is language are learned mainly through imitation. Imitation can help when you learn a language, but it's not only by imitation that students learn. There are more than imitation. We can use imitation for example, for pronunciation. It can be helpful for students to use imitation as a strategy to learn pronunciation. But imitation cannot be the mainly focus as a way of language learning. But the second idea we have here is parents usually correct young children when they make grammar error. This is not exactly right because they rarely receive correction in grammar structure and grammar errors. I mean, their parents correct the children, but they don't focus in grammar. They they may focus on the meaning in communication. They correct uh, what the child is trying to say to communicate. So then we have another idea. That the idea is highly intelligent people are good language learner. Here, and there is a belief that people with high IQ learn easier the language or they are good at learning second language. But it is not like that in all the case. If you want to learn a language, you don't have to have a high Q because language learning process involves a variety of skills, ability. So we should be careful while we are as a teacher, as teachers, while we are evaluating our student, um, whether they are good or bad in language. They will bring different kind of intelligence and abilities in the classroom. So another idea is the best predictor of success in a second language acquisition is motivation. So basically, this idea say that the success of the process in second language acquisition is motivation. And I think motivation has an important role when we are learning a second language because motivation gives off the reason to do something. So this is why I'm doing this. But there are another factor that influence the success of learning a second language. For example, um, as a teacher, I have to keep in mind that my students may come from different cultures and backgrounds, and they may have individuals difference. Another idea we found here in the document is the easier a second language is introduced in a school program, the greater the likelihood of success in learning. I think it must depend on the objective of the language program in a particular school context. And if the aim is to have native-like performance, so this idea can be implemented, and the idea would be the best and would be the good idea to implement in the school. But if the objective is to have a native-like performance, we have to take into account that there will be a disadvantage, and because students will have less opportunity to continue develop their first language, and this is very important. So then we have most of the mistake that second language learners make are due to interference for their first language. This statement say that the second language learning errors are caused because the first language. And I don't agree with this because there are another factor that may influence. For example, a student can make errors based on creative constructions or maybe simplifications. So, in the document, I found that teachers should be careful on deciding the reason of our student errors because we have to correct our student according to the origin of the mistake of the error. Then we have the next idea, which is the best way to learn new vocabulary is through reading. Mm, Reading is a really good way to learn new vocabulary. This can help students to expand their vocabulary knowledge, but I don't consider this as a best way to learn new vocabulary. As I read in the document, it can be one of the best way, and not the best way, because there are students that probably don't read a lot, but they can have another strategies that help them to achieve to learn new vocabulary. Then we have once learned know roughly 1,000 words and basic structure of a second language, they can easily participate in a conversation with native speaker. Okay, this idea says that it's necessary to know a limit number of words and sentences to communicate in a second language. However, it doesn't mean that if the learner know that limited the word or structure, they can communicate in a good way. In some point, I agree with this statement, but it is more than not a limit number of words and structure in a conversation. The students also need to understand and be able to use some of the pragmatic aspects. And another idea that we find here in the document is learned errors should be correct as soon as they are made in order to prevent the formation of bad habit. Uh, as learners, we make a lot mistake, we make a lot errors, and that's normal. That's part of the process of learning a new language, a second language. Sorry. So teachers should know which kind of error need to correct or have an immediate reaction. For example, for pronunciation, this can be very helpful for a student. Um, and teachers should be careful with this because when there are a lot of correction, the motivation of the student may be affected. So this is very important to take it into account. And then we have teachers who use material that expose student only language structure they have already taught. So there may be some problem because of restriction classroom second language material. I totally agree with this statement because the use of language cannot be carried out only in the classroom, and this indicate that the student also need to develop a strategy for dealing with real and material when they out the classroom. Of another idea, another statement that the document has is when the learners are allowed to integrate freely, for example, in a group or pair activity, they can copy each other mistake. So I think working in group are benefits because they can help the learners to speak and interact. They have an interaction between them. But it is not completely true, this idea, um, that a student copy each other mistake because they work or they are doing activity together. If the teacher prepare the activity carefully, he can help to find a solution to this problem. So teachers should organize this type of activity carefully to give a student the opportunity to participate, interact with the second language. Now we continue talking about the second document, which is myth and misconceptions about second language learning, what every teacher needs to unlearn. So this document attempts to clarify a number of important issues concerning with children learning a second language. So here we can find five myths in the document. So the first one is children learn second language quickly and easily. And this is a myth because there are studies that have compared children to adults, and it demonstrates that adolescents and adults perform better than younger children. And it is because young children do not have access to a strategy that more experienced learners use in order to acquire a vocabulary or learn a grammar structure. So the teacher should not expect that children will learn a second language faster and it will be easy for them to learn it. No, because it is as difficult for children as it is for adults. So the second myth we have is the younger the child, the more skilled in acquiring a second language. Basically, this myth consists in if we want a child to be good on a second language, we must teach the language in a very young age. So, some research argue that the earlier child begin to learn a second language, the better. However, research does not support this conclusion in a school setting. So here, the teachers should have a realist expectation with their students because there are advantages for young learners. For example, they are good at pronunciation, they will have no accent when they speak, but others learning may have an advantage in learning grammar structure due to the experience they have using a strategy and method to help them to acquire the language. Then we have the third myth, which is the more time students spend in a second language content, the quicker they learn the language. So here, many educators believe children from non-English speaking background will learn English best through a structured immersion. However, there are research that indicate that it is not true because that high exposures it doesn't speed the acquisition of English. So then we have another myth, which is children have acquired a second language once they can speak. So sometimes teacher assumes that once children can speak English, they have mastered the language, but this isn't true because English not only have a good conversation, have an oral skill. There are reading and writing that children who learn in a second language may have some problems. So here we have to be aware of this because we can assume that if a student speak English, it means that he or she doesn't have problem in other skills. And finally, the last myth we have is all children learn a second language in the same way. This is very interesting myth because there still some people, some teachers that believe in this, and they believe that all the students learn at the same way, but this is not true. This is wrong. Teachers need to be aware of culture and individual difference in learning style. Not all the students will have same process of acquisition as second language. There are factors that really influence on that. So that's it. In conclusion, I can say that these two documents are very useful because as a future teacher, I need to be aware of these all aspects and the ideas and myths that will be in the process of my students. Also, I have to keep in mind that the process of acquisition of second language is complex, it's not easy, it won't be the same for all the students. Besides this process, that implicate different factors such as sociological, and physiological factors. So I really recommend it for future teacher to read these two documents. So that's all. Thank you so much, and bye bye.